You imagine the medieval assassin as a shadow silent, precise, untouched by consequence. A figure who slips through torchlight and disappears before the body hits the floor. That fantasy is clean, efficient, almost elegant. But if you actually lived that life, if you woke up every day knowing your hands were rented out to fate, you'd learn quickly that being a medieval assassin didn't just suck because you could die at any moment. It sucked because you were never really alive to begin with. You didn't choose this path because it was glamorous. Most assassins were born into desperation, not ambition. Poverty, war, debt, revenge, these were the real recruiters. In a world with no social safety net, your body became currency. Your ability to kill quietly was simply the most valuable thing you owned. Psychology tells us that when survival is threatened, morality becomes flexible. The brain doesn't ask, "Is this right?" It asks, "Will this keep me alive?" And once that switch flips, it's very hard to turn it back from the outside. People thought assassins were fearless. Inside, your nervous system was on fire. Every job required absolute presence. One misstep, one creaking floorboard, one wrong glance, and your life ended in seconds. The human brain was never designed to live in that kind of constant threat. Cortisol flooded your bloodstream not for minutes, but for years. You didn't relax. You didn't rest. Even sleep was shallow because your body learned that stillness could be death. And the loneliness was absolute. You couldn't build a life. You couldn't trust friendships because attachments were liabilities. Anyone close to you could be used against you. Anyone who knew your real name had power over your fate. So you learned to fragment yourself. One identity for the street, another for the job, another that never spoke at all. Modern psychology would call this dissociation the mind's way of surviving, by splitting reality into compartments. Back then, you just called it staying alive. There was no honor code to protect you. Medieval assassins weren't knights. They weren't protected by banners or laws of war. If you were caught, you weren't imprisoned. You were displayed, executed slowly and publicly to remind everyone what happened to people who killed without permission. Torture wasn't just punishment. It was theater. And you knew that every time you took a contract. Fear wasn't a possibility. It was a certainty that just hadn't arrived yet. What made it worse was the moral erosion. Killing once doesn't make you numb. It makes you aware. You remember faces, voices, the sound a body makes when it realizes it's dying. Over time, your brain adapts. Empathy doesn't disappear, it goes quiet. Neuroscience shows that repeated violence dampens emotional response not because the person is evil, but because feeling everything would destroy them. So you learn to shut doors inside yourself and never open them again. But those doors don't stay sealed forever. They leak in the quiet moments when you cleaned your blade or waited for a signal that never came. The memories surfaced, not guilt in the poetic sense, but weight, a heaviness that settled into your chest and never fully lifted. You weren't haunted by morality. You were haunted by repetition. Another life, another payment, another reminder that this was all you were allowed to be. And payment itself was unreliable. Patrons lied. Promises evaporated. Sometimes the person who hired you became the person who ordered your death. In a world without contracts that meant anything, trust was a gamble you usually lost. Behavioral science calls this unstable reinforcement the kind that creates obsession and paranoia. You never knew if the risk would be worth it, but you took it anyway, because the alternative was starvation or exposure. Religion didn't help the way people imagine it did. Medieval Europe was saturated with ideas of sin, damnation, and eternal punishment. Every job carried not just physical risk, but metaphysical terror. You weren't just risking your life, you were risking your soul. Confession didn't erase blood. Prayer didn't silence memory. And absolution felt thin when you knew tomorrow might demand the same violence again. There was also the physical toll. Assassins weren't superhuman. They got sick. They got injured. An infected cut could kill you faster than any guard. There were no antibiotics, no reliable surgeons. Pain was constant, untreated, and deeply personal. You learned to function through it because stopping wasn't an option. Your body became something you used up piece by piece. And if you survived long enough, something stranger happened. You became obsolete. Younger men learned faster, took bigger risks, charged less. Experience didn't protect you, it marked you. People started to recognize patterns. Whispers followed you. The world felt smaller. The shadows you once hid began to close. There was no retirement, no peaceful ending. You didn't grow old telling stories by the fire. You disappeared, quietly, violently, or anonymously. History didn't remember you unless you failed spectacularly. Success erased you. That was the bargain. Do your job perfectly, and no one ever knows you existed. So yes, it sucked to be a medieval assassin. Not because it lacked skill or intelligence, but because it demanded everything and gave nothing back. It hollowed you out while keeping you functional just long enough to be useful. It asked you to live without belonging, love without attachment, and survive without a future. And maybe the most unsettling truth is this: the assassin wasn't a monster. He was a human shaped by pressure, necessity, and a world that offered no gentle paths. He wasn't born in darkness. He adapted to it. So when you picture that shadow slipping through stone corridors, ask yourself something different. Not how deadly he was, but how much of himself he had to erase just to keep breathing. And then ask quietly, honestly, how much of ourselves do we still trade away today, just to survive in different kinds of shadows?